You're listening to the One Man Show Network. Welcome to the MMA Fight Picks Podcast with your host, Aaron Weinbaum.
Hey kids, welcome to the MMA Fight Picks Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Weinbaum. If you're on the Periscope or YouTube, feel free to chime in on these fight picks as I'm trying to attempt to go live in both places. If you're listening to the audio-only podcast, I'm trying to reach a milestone there, so please keep jamming on that download button, recommending it to a friend or, however else you may spread the word. I would certainly appreciate it. But this looks like a good card. Sao Paulo, Brazil, Blachowicz versus Jacare this Saturday, November 16th. And the cool thing is I will actually be home. I can watch this fight. I won't be at a kid sporting event or whatnot. But lots of interesting fights in this card, especially what's on the main card and what's not on the main card. Way down at the bottom here, we got Warlley Alves versus Randy Brown. Now, the reason I pick Warlley Alves here, although he has alternated some wins and losses here and there, he does hold a win off of the great Colby Covington. And then Randy Brown, fighter from Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, just had a win over Ryan Barberena. Before that, he lost to Nico Price. He does have a win, of course, over Mickey Gall. Loses to the great Bilal Muhammad. Man, he's been in the UFC a bit longer than I give him credit for at this time. I think he's been since 2016 now, obviously. Oh, man. And then you got Warlley Alves. Just beat Sérgio Moraes, lost to James Krause, beats Sultan Alavi Salim Tarari, but then he loses to the two tops there, and Kamaru Usman and Brian Barberena. Gosh, this one is tough to pick. I think this is going to be a better fight than people give it credit for. But, I go into these things undecided. I do like Randy Brown in this fight, if ever so slightly. Yeah. So I just mentioned both these guys. Sergio Moraes against the great James Krause. Moraes has just came off of 2 losses. Warlley Alves, Antonio Rocco Martin. Before that, he's got wins over Ben Saunders and Tim Means. Of course, he loses to a punch against Kamaru Usman. But he also has wins over Zach Otto, Davey Ramos. Man, this is interesting, man. And then you got Krause. I think he's a bit one of the more touted here, and he's on a 5-fight win streak, which is kind of strange that this fight's kind of taking place here because Moraes is on a 2-fight skid, so I don't know if this is a replacement or what, and I didn't know it. But Krause has just beaten Warlley Alves, Alex White, Tom Galicchio, I believe he's the candy man, Shane Campbell, Darren Cruikshank. Wow. Before that, way back when, he loses to Valmir Lazaro and Masvidal back when I believe Masvidal was a lightweight. So obviously he'd fought at lightweight before. I believe this one is contested at welterweight, like I said before. Man, I don't really get this matchup, I guess. And if I'm missing something here, feel free to chime in on the Periscope and let me know. But no, I don't know what it is I'm missing. I don't even think this is a rematch. It's just an odd match, and I don't see why James Krause wouldn't run away with this. Oh, this is a tough one to pick for me because it's Charles Oliveira, who's kind of on a tear lately, against friend of the podcast, Jared Gordon. It was I think it was my other podcast at the time because I tried to get him on the MMA Fight Picks one, but he didn't want to pick fights. So it is what it is. But Oliveira, man, 5-fight win streak. Nick Lentz, David Tamer, Jim Miller, Chris Giagos. He hasn't lost since Felder in 2017. I know Oliveira still talks like sometimes he's going to go down to featherweight again, but there's no reason to. Jared Gordon, man, what a stand-up guy, recovering addict, just super cool all around, at least from my experiences with him. Just beat Dan Moret. For that, he loses Joaquim Silva, loses to Carlos Diego Fiera. I think one of these fights, like I could swear his hamstring was about tore off, and I think that was the Lee versus Iaquinta 2 card. Before that, he was on an absolute tear. I know he used to try to cut down to featherweight as well. I think I think these guys are both about equal in size. Gosh, this one's a tough one to pick because Dino, I see you commented, but I can't understand what you said there, buddy. Sorry. This is tough, but this is no slight whatsoever to Jared Gordon. I just think this is the way it's going to go. Is Oliveira is just a little bit slicker on the ground. Please, by all means, Jared, please prove me wrong because I think you're a good guy. I do, and I wish you nothing but the best in this fight, and I hope you do win. All right. Mauricio, Shogun Hua versus Paul Craig. Well, who's Paul Craig, you say? Well, Paul Craig just Vinicius Moreira back in September. He did lose to Alonzo Menfield. And, basically he's fought a bunch of guys I haven't heard of, but loses to the guys I have heard of, Jimmy Crute, Khalil Roundtree Jr., Tyson Pedro. And let's look at more Shogun here. Quietly he's won he's won 4 of his last 5 here. Beats Little Nog, beats Corey Anderson by a split decision. That's a big deal because Corey's kind of a hot thing right now. Knocks out Jean Vellante, loses to the great Anthony Smith. He gets KO'd. Let's see, I'm getting here. And he just beat Tyson Pedro. So it's it's something for him to be still hanging around. And, his last loss being to probably the number 3 or 4 guy in the division, Anthony Lionheart Smith, and he beats Tyson Pedro. I think just strength of schedule, experience, I got to go with great Shogun Hua. I feel like I should pick a method here, but Paul Craig loses his submissions and knockouts. So, man, I'm not going to pick a method here, but yeah. All right. The middleweight killer, Jan Blachowicz, taking on Jacare Souza. This fight being contested at 205 pounds. Jacare's premiere, if you will, in this weight class in the UFC. Looking at Jan Blachowicz, he hasn't lost in a while, and that was Thiago Santos back in February. I guess he has lost pretty recently. I take that back. But he has won more than he has lost. He did beat Luke Rockhold. Luke Rockhold thinking he was going to come up to 205 pounds, test the waters, and tell the light heavyweights what's up. He did not. But then he's got quite a list here. Nikita Krylov, Jimmy Manuel, Jared Cannonier before he went back down, Devin Clark. He did lose to Pat Cummins, and of course he lost to Alexander Gustafsson. But then you got Jacare, man. I don't know. I just wish there were 10-pound increments and these guys weren't popping up, 20 pounds or whatnot, because I'd like to see Weidman at like a 195. I'd like to see Jacare at like a 195. Back in the day, I would have liked to have seen a Rich Franklin back at 195, and I believe he had a pair of catchweight fights against Wanderlei Silva at that weight. But if you look at Jacare's body of work here, he just lost to Jack Hermanson. He did beat Chris Weidman kind of in a wild fight because I think Weidman had it until he didn't. He loses Kelvin Gastelum, beats Derek Brunson, loses to the champ Robert Whittaker by head kick. I saw that, by the way, in Kansas City. It was super cool. Because at the time, I'm like, who the hell is Robert Whittaker? He's that welterweight Ultimate Fighter guy. From the house. But, way back when, he's got some notable wins over Tim Bosch and Vitor Belfort. But, man, I just think, Anthony Smith, Thiago Santos, those were big, huge middleweights, and I just didn't feel that way about Luke Rockhold. I just didn't feel that way against, about Chris Weidman. Now, I don't think they belong at 185, but I don't think they belong at 205 either. We'll see when Jacare comes in there, but I just have to go with Jan Blachowicz here. coming up 20 pounds heavier. I just don't know if that's a thing. I don't know if that's going to work out. But, yeah, I got it. I got Jan in this one, and we'll see what happens, and we'll see if he gets a fight because slowly this guy is spoiling, and Dominic Reyes is spoiling the whole come up from middleweight, get a title shot after a couple of wins theory because, Anthony Lionheart Smith and Thiago Santos were the two to do it. And I really underestimated how good Anthony Smith was until that Gustafsson fight. But, yeah, that's it. I think we picked them all. So tune in this week. And like I said, help me out. Spread the word about the MMA Fight Picks podcast. Of course, you can go to aaronsayswhat.com and click on all my tabs and support the podcast. That way, I appreciate. I did have some viewers on here. I appreciate all you for listening today. And until next time, shalom.
Please remember to support the podcast by visiting the affiliate links on aaronsayswhat.com.